Seconds after Spain won the World Cup, the team that lost grabbed a Spanish player by the throat and floored him. Substitutes and coaches piled in while the confetti was still in the air. On Monday, FIFA appointed a prosecutor to investigate the aftermath. But this is not the first file FIFA has opened on this Argentina side. It is not the second either. A banner in Atlanta 5 days earlier is already under investigation, and the paperwork goes back years, so the question stopped being what happened. It became why it keeps happening to the same team. Start with the file, because that part is real and signed. On Monday, the 20th of July, FIFA confirmed it had gone through the match reports from the final and, in line with Article 36 of its disciplinary code, appointed a disciplinary and ethics prosecutor to look into the post-match incidents. Read that wording, because it does a lot of quiet work. It names no player. It sets no deadline. It charges no one yet. It points at one thing, the aftermath of the final, and hands it to the one office inside FIFA built to put a case together. The report, FIFA said, will be shared once it is done. And notice who that statement does not clear. FIFA said it is looking at the post-match incidents, full stop. The headlines all point at Argentina, and for good reason, but it was Spain's substitutes who ran onto the pitch and into the other team in the first place. On paper, the whole brawl is in scope, both benches, both sets of players. Whether the prosecutor treats it that way is one more thing nobody outside FIFA knows yet. So a fight that lasted maybe 30 seconds is now an open case with no end date and no names on it. And the second you ask who is actually in that file, you are asking the exact question FIFA left blank. To see what the prosecutor is looking at, go back to the pitch. MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford, New Jersey. This was not a calm game breaking late. It had been a rough one for 90 minutes, a run of hard fouls and heavy challenges that kept threatening to boil over. The final is 0-0 deep into extra time when Ferran Torres scores in the 106th minute and wins Spain their second World Cup 16 years after their first, back in South Africa in 2010. And Argentina are already down to 10 men. Enzo Fernandez had been sent off around the 90th minute for a second yellow, a foul on the young Spain defender Pau Cubarsí, on a night his team piled up 6 yellow cards. So the champions are losing, a man short, and the whistle is coming. Then it comes, and that is when it starts. Spain's substitutes sprint onto the grass to celebrate their title. Footage shown by the BBC appears to catch Argentina's right back, Nahuel Molina catching Rodri in the midriff as the Spain midfielder runs across the pitch. Eric Garcia comes across. And then Leandro Paredes, who had only come on at halftime and inside 6 minutes had already bumped Rodri to the turf and shoved Dani Olmo over, storms straight into the middle of it. Paredes puts his hand to the throat of Garcia, the Barcelona defender, and the force of it floors him. Benches empty. Coaches wade in. Lionel Scaloni pushes into the crowd to drag his own players out, while a few yards away, Spain's teenager Lamine Yamal drops his head and prays. The trophy is not even in the air yet. The split screen said everything. On one side, a 19-year-old in Lamine Yamal kneeling in prayer as he becomes a world champion. On the other, grown men wrestling in front of the technical area over a game that was already finished. Same 10 seconds, same patch of grass, 2 completely different endings to the same tournament. On ITV, Gary Neville watched it and called it a disgrace. He said he loved the fight in the Argentines, that Messi had carried them for years, and that the last few games had still been a disgrace. That is a Manchester United great, not an Argentine rival, saying it live on air while it happened. So yeah, not a great way to hand over a crown. Remember what this night was supposed to be. Argentina came to defend the crown they won in Qatar. For Messi, widely expected to be playing his last World Cup, it was meant to be a send-off, one more star, a clean goodbye at the end of the greatest career the game has seen. Instead, the goodbye ended with his teammates swinging at the winners and his coach hauling them off each other. The fairy tale did not just fall short, it turned into paperwork. And it was not only Argentina's night that got dragged down. Spain had just won their second world title in 16 years, the one they had waited a whole generation for, and their celebration was swallowed by a brawl they walked into rather than started. The lasting image of the 2026 final is not a Spanish captain lifting the trophy, it is a fight in front of the benches. Now here is the detail most people scrolled straight past. Paredes was shown a red card for the throat grab. Then that red card was quietly taken off the official match record. When the paperwork settled, Enzo Fernandez, sent off during the game itself, was left as Argentina's only dismissed player of the entire night. So the single moment that lit the whole brawl, the one the entire world watched on a loop, officially cost nobody a card. Pay attention to this next detail, because it explains why FIFA reached for a prosecutor at all. A red card carries an automatic ban and a fixed, simple process. A red card that disappears leaves nothing on the books to punish. If the worst thing that happened at the final is going to carry any consequence, somebody has to build that case out of the match reports, by hand, after the fact. That somebody is now appointed. And that is a very different thing from a referee's call on the night. A referee acts in the moment. A prosecutor goes back and reads everything. So what can that office actually do? A lot more than a card ever could. A disciplinary and ethics prosecutor is not boxed into violent conduct. Under the code, the prosecutor can look into any offense it finds in the reports and can propose punishments on football associations, on clubs, and on individual players. And this is only the first rung. The prosecutor builds the case and proposes the punishment. Then FIFA's disciplinary committee decides. Then, if anyone is punished, they can appeal, first inside FIFA, and then, in theory, all the way to the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Switzerland. So even once a name lands in this file, the fight over it could run long past the summer. The everyday version of the punishment is the boring one. FIFA usually reaches for fines in Swiss francs and, in the worst cases, orders to play a future match with part of the stadium closed. We know that menu, because FIFA used all of it after the last World Cup. Serbia were fined and ordered to play a match with a quarter of their stadium shut. Mexico were fined 100,000 Swiss francs over chants from their fans. Ecuador were fined too. These are the everyday tools, money, and closed seats, and most of them barely make the news a week later. That is the floor the finals file starts from. The ceiling is where it gets serious. For violent conduct, the code sets a minimum of at least a 3-match ban, and it says plainly that further measures can be stacked on top in any case. And here's the part that should worry any player who has not been named yet. FIFA can take a ban and stretch it across every competition on Earth, club football included. That is exactly what it did in 2014, when it banned Luis Suarez across all football for biting Giorgio Chiellini, a ban that followed him out of the World Cup and all the way back to his club. Most of these Argentina players do not go home to rest either. Paredes plays his club football abroad, Lisandro Martinez plays in England for Manchester United, and a worldwide ban would not politely wait for the next Argentina game. It would follow them into their club season. Nobody is saying that is coming. But that is the size of the tool now pointed at the final. And think about what the throat grab is, in the language of that code. If the prosecutor calls it violent conduct, and it is hard to watch it and call it anything softer, the code's own floor is 3 matches. For a player whose next game in Argentina colors could be a long way off, 3 matches served across his club season is not a slap on the wrist. It is the gap between a fine the federation pays and forgets by Friday and a punishment a player actually feels. We take every flashpoint of this tournament apart while it is still moving, and this file is nowhere near closed. So stay with it, because the final is not the only Argentina case open on FIFA's desk this month. 5 days before the final, a second case had already surfaced. After Argentina beat England 2-1 in the semifinal in Atlanta, defender Lisandro Martinez and the unused substitute Giovanni Lo Celso held up a banner that read, "Las Malvinas son Argentinas." The Falklands are Argentine. In the United Kingdom, where the islands are British territory and where a 10-week war over them in 1982 killed hundreds of soldiers on both sides, it went off like a grenade. British government officials called for action. A spokesman for the British Prime Minister answered it dryly, saying the World Cup might not be theirs, but the Falkland Islands definitely were. FIFA opened proceedings over a breach of its stadium code of conduct. Argentina did not back down an inch. President Javier Milei called the celebration perfectly valid and said the message spoke to something all Argentinians feel, while admitting he still expected a fine. His vice president posted the banner photo herself and said they carry the message in their blood. So inside 1 week, the same team handed FIFA 2 separate things to investigate. A banner after the semifinal and a brawl after the final. And if you think the banner is new, it is not. Argentina were investigated for almost the exact same message before the 2014 World Cup, when players held up a Malvinas banner before a warm-up game against Slovenia just days before that tournament kicked off. FIFA has punished this kind of gesture before too. A South Korea player was once banned for 2 World Cup qualifiers for holding up a similar banner claiming land at the Olympics. So the governing body already keeps a file on this exact move, and Argentina just reopened it. And that is where a bad week turns into something bigger, because these files did not start this summer. Go back to the last World Cup in 2022. FIFA opened a case against Argentina for disorder during their quarterfinal against the Netherlands, a match so bad-tempered it set a World Cup record with 17 players and coaches booked, Messi among them, and Paredes blasting a ball straight into the Dutch bench. Argentina won it on penalties, and then celebrated right in the faces of the beaten Dutch. It was the game where Messi stopped mid-interview to snap at a Dutch player, where the two benches almost came together, and where the bad feeling did not end when the game did. Their defender, Nicolas Otamendi, later shrugged it off, saying they only celebrated in the Dutch players' faces because the Dutch had been chirping them all through the shootout. Retaliation, he called it. That was one file from that tournament. There was another. After Argentina went on to win the whole thing, FIFA opened a second case, this time over the celebrations, citing offensive behavior and player misconduct. During the party, players ran through the official interview area and damaged partition walls. The goalkeeper made a crude gesture with the trophy on the pitch, and a celebrity chef known as Salt Bae somehow walked onto the field to grab the cup for photos. FIFA said afterward it would tighten its own security. Argentina still won the argument that mattered most, the World Cup itself. But the file stayed open, and FIFA only opened that case weeks after the final, once the tournament was long over and the parade was done. These things move on FIFA's clock, not the news cycles. So do not expect a verdict on this final while the confetti is still being swept up. 2 files from one tournament, and the trail did not stop there. In a 2026 qualifier at the Maracana in Rio, FIFA opened proceedings again after a brawl in the stands pushed kickoff back by around half an hour, with police swinging batons and Messi leading his own team off the pitch until it calmed down. Argentina won the match itself 1-0, handing Brazil their first ever home defeat in World Cup qualifying, which did nothing to cool the bad blood. Brazil were fined 50,000 Swiss francs for that night, Argentina 20,000, and Argentina were told to spend another 50,000 on anti-discrimination work over their fans at earlier games. Now the banner. Now the final. Same governing body, the same team, case after case after case. If you have been keeping count at home, drop the number in the comments, because even FIFA looks like it has lost track. None of these files, on its own, is the kind of thing that ends a team. Together, they are a paper trail that follows this side from tournament to tournament, from Qatar to Rio to New Jersey, and a prosecutor reading the finals reports is not reading them in a vacuum. He is reading the newest page in a folder that has been getting thicker for years. So, where does that leave the champions who are champions no longer? Waiting. FIFA has named no player, set no deadline, and promised only that it will share the findings once the case is built. Paredes, whose red card vanished off the record, might end up as the name that matters, or he might not be named at all. Enzo Fernandez already carries his dismissal from the game, and it was not even his first red of this World Cup cycle. He had already been sent off in a qualifier along the way, a straight red for a raised boot that caught an opponent in the head and drew blood. And a dozen other players from both sides were somewhere in that pile when the whistle went. Any of them could be in the file. None of them has been told. That is the strange wait of an open case with no timetable. Everyone waits, and nobody knows whether the wait ends in a shrug or a suspension. And it is not only players in the frame. FIFA can punish the Argentine Federation itself for the conduct of its team, even if no single player is ever singled out. 11 men can be cleared, and the badge can still be fined. So here is the desk this file landed on. A brawl the referee's own record barely captures, a prosecutor with the reach to touch every league on earth, and a stack of older Argentina files underneath it going all the way back to Qatar. The trophy went to Spain and stayed there. What Argentina carried off the pitch was a case number, and as of today, that number has no verdict written next to it. So here is the one worth arguing over. When the report finally lands, who should it name? The player who grabbed a throat on camera, the defender who appears to have thrown the first shove, or the team that keeps ending its biggest nights in exactly the same place? Tell us below. We will be right here when the file reopens, and by now you already know where to find it.